Hello everybody and welcome back to the farm. So in this episode we're going to do a little bit of time traveling. What you're seeing right now is the very first time that I mowed my field with that FERRIS 52-inch lawnmower that I bought in February or March of 2024. So as you're watching this is about a week or 2 weeks before I plowed and disked the field and planted all my plants. I wanted to make sure that the grassy area was mowed and everything was good so that I had a nice sharp delineation between the grass and the field. And man, this thing is fun. It's very nimble. However, there's some problems with it. Naturally. I have this issue where randomly it'll bog down, the engine will start surging, and eventually it'll die out. And then it's almost impossible to start it back up again. And I just don't know why. But we're going to take a look at that in just a little while. Right now, I just wanted to show some clips of how this thing mows. Now, all through the winter and spring, I was looking for a 60 or 61 inch or even larger mower. But what I settled on was this 52-inch FERRIS because of two reasons. It was the biggest I could find that wasn't $1 million, or realistically several $1,000s. And also because it was in what looked like really good shape. It was in good cosmetic shape compared to some of the other junky ones that I found on Marketplace. And it was also in mechanically good shape. The person that owned it was a mechanic. He always had it maintained. He had a full book of the service that went into this mower, so I figured it was worth a shot. Now I'm going to make sort of a contradictory statement, and if you own a FERRIS, maybe you could validate this or not. The mower mows good and bad at the same time. So it mows consistently across the 52-inch deck, which is good. But after you pass over the grass, it just doesn't really look manicured well. It looks like you have to go over the grass a second or even a third time. Also, when you turn side to side, left to right, or when you go in a full circle on this machine, the mower deck tends to dig in to the ground on the outside edge of whatever you're turning. So I have some scalp marks from the areas where I made a full circle using this mower. It's very hard to adjust the mowing height. So this thing has a linear actuator that lifts the deck up and down. And you can lift the deck, it kind of tilts the deck up, and you can do the same thing, tilt it down. And if you do that in very fine increments, then you have some fine control. But even doing that, it's just not a fantastic cut. It's a lot of fun to mow with this mower. And this is the largest mower I've ever owned. So for me, it's astounding to be able to mow 50-something inches per pass across the lawn. And like I said, it does mow consistently left to right across the width of the deck. But I'm not entirely happy with this machine. And as I'm mowing with this, it has stalled out a couple times. So combine that with the stalling problem, and I'm just largely unsure about my future with this mower. So as you're watching the remainder of these mowing clips, let me kind of fill you in on what happened after this video. So the mower stalled, and I couldn't move it from my field. I tried for about 2 hours, finally got it restarted, and I got it loaded up onto my trailer, and I brought it home. I immediately started taking inventory of what the possible problems could be, and I think it's mostly an electrical issue. So here's where the problem is. You're going to start hearing the surging. Now this surging happens randomly, and it's definitely not a fuel issue. So over the next 3 weeks, I systematically replaced every electrical component on this mower. the ignition switch, the battery, the starter motor, the starter solenoid, and the voltage regulator rectifier. After that, I broke the engine open and I replaced the spark plugs, the ignition coils, the magneto, the flywheel magnet, and about 6 sub-harnesses of the wiring harness. After I did all of that, the mower worked well. But I just wanted something bigger. So I listed this for sale on Facebook Marketplace, and I got a buyer from Oswego, and he actually paid about $500 or $800 more than what I paid for it. And I reinvested that money into a different mower that you're going to see in a couple of videos. Okay, so now we're changing tracks. Let's fast forward. It's about mid-June, and I'm going to take care of the bees. It's time to expand their colony, to add more parts, if the parts would only stay on this cart. So I have a big cart of stuff, and all of this stuff are all of the other pieces of the beehives, the boxes, the screens, the honey supers, all of that stuff that goes on after the colony establishes themselves in the single boxes that you saw a couple of videos ago when I rehomed the bees. There's probably an easier way to do this, but this is what happens. I loaded everything onto the cart and I hoped for the best. There's probably 2 carts worth of stuff here, but you could just laugh at me as I continually have to straighten out these boxes on the cart. Everything just wanted to fall off. So I finally finished the 6-minute walk and made it back to the beehives. Now, the critical thing that we're going to do today is prepare for honey. That's the point of having bees. I mean, bees are good pollinators. There's a lot of reasons for having bees. But the main reason why I wanted to have bees was honey. I love honey. So in this box are all of the plastic honey frames that go in the autoflow beehive. These are those plastic frames that have the mechanism that you twist and the honey just kind of flows out of them without having to pull the frames out and spin them and all the stuff that you have to do with a conventional Langstroth hive. Now, what you see me dropping off here are all of the ancillary pieces. The box is the honey super, and then that mesh is the Queen Excluder that goes on top of it. And then this unfinished box is part of my conventional Langstroth hive. That's where the honey supers go in that box. And these are the frames. They're a plastic construct with an internal mechanism that allows drainage of the honey. And we just fill up the honey super box with these frames. And this box is very interesting. The autoflow system is really cool. There's a lot of pieces. There's a lot of doors, a lot of hatches, and there's a lot of things that open up in the process of getting the honey extracted from this box. I'm very excited to see if this actually works. So let's get into it, I guess. Let's get this on the beehive. So the only thing that's left before we do that process is to suit up with the bee suit. And while I haven't been stung yet, knock on wood, and I probably don't need the suit, it just makes me a lot more comfortable wearing the suit, wearing the gloves. I don't fear the bees, I don't fear the bee stings, but, why risk it? Better safe than sorry. Fortunately, it's not 100 degrees out today. It's probably 75 degrees, and it's a nice day to be suited up and dealing with the bees. So starting out first here, this is the conventional Langstroth hive. So this is just going to receive the honey super box with conventional honey frames that go in it. We built those in a previous video. Smoking the bees helps settle them a little bit, and it draws them into the center of the hive to protect the queen. And doing that allows me to more safely remove this top cover plate without injuring any of the bees. As you're going to see, there's a ton of bees on the bottom of this plate, which is fine. As long as they're out of the way of where I'm working, that's fine. As you see, I had to pry this top off though, and that's because the bees have already started moving their way upward out of these initial frames, and there's a lot of wax and actually a lot of honey residue on the top of these frames. So this process right here, I'm clearing off the shoulders of the frames. I'm getting some of this wax buildup off of the shoulders so that I could put the next box on top of it, and so that I could put that Queen Excluder grate on top of this without this wax and the honey getting in the way. I'm being very careful here to avoid the bees, making sure the bees get out of the way before I scrape the stuff off. Now what I'm doing is just kind of dumping this on the ground around the hive, and the bees will actually find this and they will recycle it. They will recycle the wax and reconsume the honey, and they'll bring it back into the hive. So I'm not worried about where I'm dumping this stuff. It'll all make its way back in. So once I'm done with this scraping process, the next thing that I have to do is put the Queen Excluder mesh on here. Now this is the one that came with this hive, and it's very flimsy and the openings are very tight, and this is going to cause a huge problem in a couple months. We're going to look into this. So in the meantime, I'm actively trying to find a replacement to this particular plastic mesh. So this box right here is the Honey Super, and all of those frames that are in it are completely empty. Now that Queen Excluder prevents the queen from climbing up here, which means that there won't be any larvae or any of that kind of stuff in these cells. They will only be honey cells. So here we are with the top cap again. I want to clean the remainder of all of this stuff off. And what you're looking at right here, these are honey cells. This stuff is dripping with honey. Now there's other stuff mixed in with this. There's other elements of the bee structures in here. Some of them may be larvae, some of them may be storage of other materials. But a lot of what's up here is actually pure honey. And as I'm cleaning this, I'm looking at it and I'm almost dreaming of the taste of this fresh honey. So I noticed that closest to the camera on the left hand side of this lid, all of those cells, it's all pure honey. So I'm thinking that instead of dumping this on the ground, maybe I'll save a little bit of this. Maybe I'll move it off to the side, and maybe I'll actually see what this tastes like once I get all the rest of this junk out of the way. So now as we're kind of getting close to the edge over here, I'm thinking of what I can do with these honey cells, this honeycomb, where I could put it. And I realized that I have the boxes that the bees came in. It's right behind me on the ground. So I'm going to remove this honeycomb and I'm going to taste it. But first, I'm going to smoke some of these bees here. I'm going to try and get them out of the way because I want to preserve this honeycomb intact and I don't want to be scooping up bees with it. So I just figured a few puffs of this smoker will get the bees out of the way enough so that I can safely extract this big chunk of honeycomb and move it onto the box behind me. I'm going to taste this. I can't wait. I'm excited. My mouth is watering. But now that everything's clean and cleared up, I'm just going to flip this over and I'm going to put this back onto the top of the Honey Super where it goes. I'm being very careful not to squish any bees. I'm trying to wiggle them out of the way here. And there it is. I just have to kind of adjust the boxes so that they're together and level. And I have to get that lid back on this. So I want to get these bees out of the way. I don't want to squish the bees that are on the top of this box. So the bees will very slowly make their way back into the hive. Now on this conventional Langstroth hive, I didn't put any clips on this, any toggles or clamps on the side. So these boxes kind of slide around. I'm probably going to deal with this in the upcoming season, the 2025 season. And just like that, with the lid on it, this hive is done. These bees can now start moving up into the honey superbox and start producing volumes of honey. And I can't wait until later in the season. So now it's just a matter of doing the exact same thing with the blue autoflow hive right next to it. I removed that roof structure, and the next thing is to remove the top screen. This one doesn't have a top plate, it has a screen, and as you can see, the exact same thing is happening in this hive. The bees have worked their way up through those initial frames that we put in here, and they've already started building a structure on that top screen. So I'm going to have to scrape the wax off of that screen. But behind that, what you see me doing back there is the exact same thing I just did in the foreground. Scraping all of that honey and all of that wax off of those frames, the tops of the frames. And now I'm placing the Queen Excluder that came with this kit, a much nicer Queen Excluder than the plastic one. And then atop that, I'm placing those autoflow honey frames, those special plastic frames that we just put in this box. And that's it. It's a very simple process. And this one is also ready for bee action, making honey so that we can harvest it. So I'm going to scrape all of this wax and the honeycomb off of this screen. I'm going to dump it on the ground just like I did before. The bees are going to find it and they're going to recycle it. It's going to end up right back in the hive. Natural materials, raw materials. And I'm going to cap it, and then I'm going to put the roof back on it. And then we're done. Not a bad process. This is the first time that I've done it. And I'm very excited to say that I have two fully functional, two fully producing beehives. There's a lot of pride at this moment as I complete this process, because I know that for the 2024 season at least, we're done. The bees are just going to do their thing, and it's time to go. Before we depart for the day, though, I wanted to go back to my original autoflow beehive, and I wanted to open up some of those mechanisms in the back and check and see how honey production was going. And while here, I'm scraping some of the wax buildup and some of the pollen, all the other natural materials that the bees use from that door opening. And I wanted to take one more really good look at all of the beehives. Everything seems good. The bees seem very active. Bees are going in and out from the original yellow autoflow beehive. And as you can see, there's tons of bees congregating on the outside of the Langstroth hive. And then lots and lots of bees flying around my second blue autoflow beehive. I'm very excited because hopefully in about 3 or 4 weeks, I'll be able to start harvesting some honey. And speaking of which, here's that beautiful golden nectar, the honeycomb that I took from the Langstroth hive. And there it is, the first taste of honey from my beehive. And it's so delicious. It's very light. It has a sweet floral taste. And I just want to keep eating this. It's fantastic. I can't wait to bottle some of this and put it in tea and on bread and in various recipes. It's even better than I expected. Overall, the past 4 or 5 weeks have been really busy here at the farm, starting out with using my new FERRIS mower and then plowing and disking the field and then planting the field and then working with the bees to increase honey production and to create a nice sustainable future for them. It's been wild. So much has taken place, and we haven't even started the season yet. Now that summer's rolling in, things are going to ramp up. I hope. But there's a lot more to come. So many more videos as we look back across 2024 and get ready for 2025. Stay tuned. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.